It's 7 p.m., and if you're here for the Acton Select Board meeting, you're in the right place. We have all 5 members here. That's more than a quorum. We're able to start, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. We start our meetings with resident concerns. We're a chance for people to talk for up to 3 minutes. We need to hear from you so that we're not in our little bubble here. And we may not be able to get back to you right away with answers to questions or concerns, but if you do want to hear back from us, it would be good for you to say that during your 3 minutes so we know that we have some action to take. That's it. Does anyone here have any resident concerns? Come on up. We've got a couple of microphones here. You can either sit or stand. The magic is to press the little round button. Maybe say your name and...
I have pressed the round button, so I think and it's nice and bright and on, so I think I've done that right. So, say my name. Hi, I'm Glenn Cody. I live on Strawberry Hill Road. I rent a room in a house with some of my engineer friends. The bus info is just kind of confusing. I see some signs around town that say there are buses. I'm like, that sounds great. And then, oh, what did the name say? Crosstown something or other? I'll just go to Google and I go Acton bus. And then I get 3 different results. This might be a bit rambly, but democracy. So the first thing I see is from the Town of Acton website, and then it says Acton Rides Taxi Program. And I'm like, that sounds neat. Is that a bus? No, okay. And then it's like, well, that's a different program. Then there's Crosstown Connect. I'm like, okay. And that's different than there's other terminology too. There's Crosstown Connect, there's Cross Acton Transit, there's Acton Rail Shuttle Service. That sounds useful, but apparently it's gone. That's what the website says. I'm confused. I talked with my health insurance today. This reminded me of that a bit. It'd be nice to have a map of just like, here is where some buses can take you. It looks like that you need to fill out an application for the taxi shuttle service and submit something 24 hours in advance, and then you can't go to the airport. Going to the airport would be great. But what, in my utopian vision, I'd like regular bus services where I can walk outside and then go to a bus and then it's there, it's consistent. I don't have to fill out paperwork. I don't have to go to a website. I don't have to call anyone. I can just go to a bus and then go where I need to go. That's the ideal system. So I just bring this up because I feel like there could be a bit of a better way to communicate the services available for alternatives to just getting in my car. It looks like that, and I'm probably running up on time, so I'll close soon. Having just regular consistent bus services, I think, would be really good to reduce traffic. It would help get maybe places to people like the grocery store or work. It would cut down on congestion. I think it'd be cost effective. It'd be worth the money. And I don't feel like I should have to fill out paperwork to access public transportation. That seems a little bit silly to me. Those are my thoughts, so thank you.
Thanks so much, Glenn. If you end up dropping an email to us at sb@actonma.gov, or just slip me a piece of paper with your contact info, I'll make sure to get back to you with at least the facts of where the buses are and all that. But great, thank you. Yeah, so we got one person online. Why don't we hear from them? And David's wondering if he should be the person who lets them in. That's fine by me. Yeah, sure. Thanks, David.
So this is call-in user 1.
Call-in user 1, please. You should be able to speak now.
Hi, it's Karen. I'm up here in Madhav. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was also going to mention to the person before that they could engage with the Transportation Advisory Committee, and he might have a lot of fun doing that. Because I agree with him on a lot of points. I'm concerned about future victims of MBTA zoning and hope the town engages in a fund to help people get housing in Acton when they're evicted, if they're evicted, particularly buy downs of condos through rehab trusts because the interest rates have come down and treasury rates, towns are able to access money through state and federal sources now, like they could before. So it's our next opportunity, in my view. I want to thank the town for doing what they can to help the Thompsons at 92 Willow, either to allow a delay or to get the landlord to pay what he's supposed to pay until the eviction case is resolved. The town did play a role in that, and so I appreciate anything you can do to help them in the next few days. And if the open space recreation plan, are you going to let people comment then? Because this is the first time I've seen the actual document. I've been asking for it for a while, and it popped up on the DocuShare, and I witnessed the planning board prepare a letter of support before anybody had even looked at it or reviewed it or having a public session to review it. And so I'm a little uncomfortable with that. And I hope that you guys, because I thought you promised to have an actual review process, because I feel like it's got some, it's the best one I've seen, actually. But there's some shortcomings that I hope will be addressed before it's finalized. And I was hoping to find out whether I could talk then about that or now or.
Thanks. It won't be on the agenda tonight, but comments are still welcome to be sent to the planning department. There's an empty chapter ready to receive comments about the OSRP. So you send those in. You send those in.
Sure.
Yep.
Thank you. Will you let people speak about the Acton 2020 implementation update at that time?
Which one?
The Acton 2020 implementation update. Number 4. On your
Right. I'm unclear how that's going to go. That's going to be after the board reorganization, so I won't be chair anymore. So,
I see.
Yep.
Well, my comment is that I feel like the select board shouldn't be doing the update or making comments on the update before the planning board does, because by state law, the planning board is supposed to engage in that. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scott, you were trying to, yes.
How's everybody doing? I just have a few comments and questions about the town meeting we just had and the election related to the override and then the school budget. It seems as if we've been told from many members of the select board and other committees that Acton has to be more and more affordable in order to be more diverse. And diverse is very important to a lot of people. So now we've succeeded in making Acton less affordable by passing the override, so therefore will it be less diverse? And what are you going to do about that? Second, during the town meeting, the moderator, there was some confusion. There was a bus that was late, that was on its way full of voters, that it was not made clear if that bus was one of the shuttle buses or if it was a charter bus that was paid for by somebody else to drive around town and pick up voters for just that particular vote. It seemed very odd that the moderator had the ability to hold up a vote for people that were late to the meeting. Maybe they were late through no fault of their own, but that was not explained to the town, the people of the town. We need an explanation for that. The clickers. I like the idea of the clickers, but I noticed as I was waiting for the official vote, I said, well, let's see what happens if I vote again. Well, I vote again. Well, check mark goes off. Well, let's see what happens if I turn it off and turn it back on and vote again. Oh, another check mark goes off. So I was able to vote repeatedly over time. Is that vote counted? Are those votes counted multiple times? Or is this hackable? We were told a few years ago when we had the clickers that we couldn't use them one of the years after we had used them because they were hackable, but no one ever explained how they made them unhackable. Or are they really secure? Can people, there was the moderator did not do a good job explaining how to work the clickers, especially if you were in one of the remote rooms, which I was. And, it would be nice if the people that handed out the clickers could give us some sort of security, some explanation of how they make it easy to vote, but hard to cheat. That's the main thing. And speaking of that, there was also at least one town meeting participant that called in from home and was able to ask questions from home. Is that going to be something that everybody can do from now on? There's a lot of people in town that couldn't go to town meeting that would have liked, if they knew that was an option. And was that person allowed to vote from home? And if so, is that allowed by state law, town policy? We just need some better explanations of all these things, please. So I'm asking for responses to each one of my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. We'll make sure to get back to you. No one else online? Okay. Anybody else in the audience with resident concerns? No. Okay. The next part of the meeting is called Chair Update, Town Manager Update, and Members Minute. So, Chair Update. Memorial Day events will be happening in Acton, Monday, May 27th. There'll be a return to the West Acton parade route this year, with the parade starting at 10 a.m. at the Boardwalk campus and the main ceremony at Mount Hope Cemetery at 10:40. Members of the board will be there, and I'm leaving it in the fine hands of the ceremonies committee to figure out what our role will be in the ceremony, but we'll be involved in some way. Tomorrow, there will be a recount of the override vote starting at 9 a.m. in this very room. People have communicated with me some concern of either, some mix of either concern or excitement about the recount. So I just wanted to communicate that the last two recounts in Acton resulted in the vote count remaining exactly the same. And there's nothing to suggest that this will be much different. Next. At the Acton end of the Assabet River Rail Trail, there's now a bench to honor Tom Kelleher, the Acton resident who was the first president of the Friends of the Assabet River Rail Trail. It's a beautiful bench. Okay, the next part, sorry, this is gonna be a little longer than usual. This is my last bit of time as chair, so I had some stuff to say. So being chair is very cool. It's sort of like being plugged into all this extra information. The chair talks a lot more to staff, and especially the manager. But all that flow is a little too much after a while. So I'm glad we rotate this, at the end of the year. I'm looking forward to being a regular board member again. My goals during my being chair included making the select board process a bit more transparent, encouraging respect for all, including, reaching out more to underserved populations, and making progress on environmental goals. And we did some of all three of those. I put the details in the annual report, so I won't go over all those today. But I'm clear that progress in all those areas is mostly due to the fact that we have a board that, has expressed common goals, and we have staff that are very responsive to those goals and very creative and hardworking in making things happen. So I'm just glad I could help things along. I think that my main strength as chair was the sort of the spirit I'm bringing to the meetings of respect for everyone and a focus on finding out how we could proceed with our decisions with as many members as possible in agreement, and hearing the members who, were not in favor, at least hearing them out. Let's see, I let the board and staff know early on about my ADHD and how best to work with me, and such as, making sure you see me writing things down when I say I'll do something, and to support me and not leaving stuff behind at the end of meetings. And I've appreciated everyone's patience and support. And I do apologize that after most agendas go out, I learn about agenda items that I had said would be on the agenda and were not. And that ends up making the staff scramble to issue revised agendas, and it's not ideal. So thanks for your patience with that. I do think it's good that we remember that no one's perfect. We each have our own unique challenges, and that by being open about them with the people we trust, we can have better outcomes. Looking over my list of undone agenda items, the ones that are left are things that I can still bring forward as a board member, and I will. Some of them are just waiting on outcomes of staff or committee review of various proposals and documents. But one item deserves a bit more of a statement, and that's having a response to the requests made to the chair from Martin Benson, which you may remember were stated in resident concerns and then restated in emails. There were four concerns. Three were mostly, I would describe them as technical items about how I did things as chair that Martin thought were either, illegal or inappropriate. I wrote him a response about those. I'm happy to put that in the extra information folder for the meeting, because that information might be helpful for other chairs. Summary, I would say is, yeah, I made some mistakes, sorry. The other item, though, was a request to revisit the town's handling of those awful anti-Black Zoom bombings in late 2020 and early 2021. So I did go back and reviewed minutes, emails, videos, documents of that painful period. And I do still think there might be some value in the board discussing the events of that area, as long as we focus on identifying and repairing any miscommunications and misunderstandings that happened within the board. I'm sorry for not getting to that item while I was chair, but I will suggest it to the new chair. I also renewed my confidence after reading all those notes that it was publicly stated more than once by town officials that there was no connection between the two Zoom bombings and the members of the Save the Colonials. This was a concern that was raised in the statements by Marty Benson. So in response, I'm happy to repeat as chair that the investigation found no connection between the Zoom bomber, who was an out-of-state teenager, and the local group that supported keeping the colonial mascot. I think there's a longer and more nuanced conversation we can have about this, but that'll have to wait for another time, I'm afraid. I hope that my style as chair has helped foster an ongoing atmosphere of trust and cooperation. I look forward to not being the chair. I plan to spend more time focusing on my committees, who have been relatively neglected this last year. Thanks, that's it. Next is town manager update.
I look forward to speaking later during the meeting. Thanks.
And member minutes.
The only member minute I have is Wednesday, May 29th at 7 p.m. in this room. There'll be the next in our Acton 250 series of speakers. Professor Robert Allison will be back again with a talk entitled The Empire Strikes Back. Should be fascinating. Thank you.
With you. Who else?
Thank you. From the Board of Health, I just wanted to announce that, well, also from the DPW, but we don't have a liaison to the DPW. There will be a hazardous waste day on Saturday, June 1st at the DPW location, which is at 14 Forest Road, from 9 a.m. until 11:30 a.m. Folks do need a transfer station or recycling sticker in order to access that event. I want to share some fun news about several community events that I was able to attend over the last couple of weeks. The Acton-Boxborough Cultural Council held their grantee reception where they recognized all of the folks who received grants last year. Last week, I attended Dawn's Pond's ribbon cutting at the Acton Arboretum. Her husband and daughter were there, and it was a really lovely event, remembering such a wonderful advocate and member of the community who added so much to the community. I also attended in Lexington the unveiling and dedication of the Lexington Women's Monument, and it was sculpted by an Acton resident, Meredith Bergman. So I encourage everybody to go and see it because it's really phenomenal. And let's see, what else did I do? Oh, I went to the Exemplary Volunteer Service Award last week, where we honored our volunteers. And I didn't want to say this that evening, to take away anything from the 5 people who were honored that night, but I had a difficult time choosing. I had a list of about a dozen volunteers, as I'm sure all of you did. So just want to give a shout out to every volunteer who's serving us. And I thought that the town manager did a great job by describing the numbers of volunteers who do different jobs all around town, from land stewards to senior workers. And then this weekend, there was the Garden Club's plant sale and the Acton Women's Club bake sale and the Green Acton Fix-It Clinic. And it seemed that all of those events were very well attended. And I just wanted to let the board know that the Health Insurance Trust meets on Thursday. We continue to have a cash flow problem. So I will provide some more updates at our next meeting on where we stand there.
David?
Thank you. I just wanted to let people know that our high school seniors graduate 2 weeks from Friday. That's June 7th. And then overnight, Acton-Boxborough Regional High School has a tradition of having a party for seniors, an alcohol-free party at the high school. It's called Project Graduation. It's staffed to a large extent by parents of juniors, so the one grade level behind, but they don't have enough volunteers so far, and there are people that are don't have kids in the high school that volunteer. Some people really enjoy doing it. There's a lot of camaraderie with the other parent volunteers that keep all the graduates safe. So if you're interested, you could go to the high school page, which is at under abschools.org, or contact me and I can point you in the right direction to be a volunteer there.
Thanks. Fran?
One quick little update in that the Historical Commission is about to implement their new archaeological bylaw, which was adopted in 2022, which is kind of neat. A development on quarry will have, it doesn't hold up any permitting. It just allows an archaeologist to go into one of these highly sensitive areas and dig. So it's kind of cool.
I'm glad to know that the implementation is now. Okay, that's it for member updates. Now we have this once-a-year thing called board reorganization. So let's review the process or change it together if we want to. We're going to elect a chair and a vice chair and a clerk in that order. Anyone can, we'll do those positions one at a time. Anyone can nominate anyone, themselves or somebody else. The person who's nominated, if you're nominating somebody else, that person actually has to accept the nomination, because it would be sad and unhelpful to have someone in an officer position who really doesn't want to. Then we'll have any discussion about that, and then we'll have a vote if there's more than one candidate, or a vote affirming the candidate if we only have one person. That's what I recall from the last couple of years. Would anybody add anything to the process there? David?
I'm not sure it's ever happened, or maybe only happened once, but if, like with ranked choice voting, if there are 3 candidates for a position and no one gets a majority, then we drop the low one and vote just on the other 2.
That makes sense to me, and
so
I agree. I don't remember that ever happening, but it's good to get it clear. Yeah.
But you stated in the rules a few times where you'd have to have 3 people nominated. And anyway, I think that way the winner has the, confidence of a majority of the board.
Makes sense. Okay, let's start at the chair. There might be nominations for chair. I will nominate Fran Arsenault. Fran, would you accept?
Yes.
Okay, there might be other nominations as well.
I will nominate Dean Charter to be chair.
Okay, that's 2 nominations. Are there other nominations? Oh, yeah, okay. Nominations need seconds? Cool. Okay, sure, let's have let's see if we can get a second for a
I'll second
nomination.
it. Oh,
Yeah.
Was there a second there? Okay, yes, Alyssa provided a second. There might be other nominations for chair. There might be thoughts from board members about who might be chair next and what makes sense and what you would advocate for. So I'm happy to hear from anyone about who to vote for. David?
I'd like to hear just a minute from the 2 people nominated, if they don't mind.
I think that'd be a great way to start. Dean or Fran?
So I think that in my past year as chair, some time ago, I think I surprised a number of people. I think that I ran good meetings, and I think that I managed to respect everyone's opinion, kept the meetings going. And maybe because politically I'm somewhat of a minority, I tended to be more guided by the desires of the board rather than my own political point of view. So if I have the opportunity to serve again, I expect that I would do the same.
Thank you, Dean. Fran?
So recognizing that it would be uncharted waters and that I would hopefully have the support of the board, I definitely would have a learning curve. But I do think that with the help of the board, I can definitely take on the position of chair. I try to not be guided by political but any political leanings, but I think that hearing from the public is really important. That would be a priority, and that's really it.
Thanks. Let's see, if we're going from left to right. The reason I nominated Fran was a number of reasons. One is that she was vice chair this year and attended all the agenda-setting meetings, so knows a lot about the process and how it works and is ready to serve. It's also been not a requirement, but a tradition to have the vice chair become the chair. So it was Fran's name who I thought of first as, let's continue this process of having the vice chair become chair. The other factor in my mind was that 3 of us, Dean and David and myself, have already been chair, so it seems good to have a new voice and rotate the responsibility. And, that would logically also include Alyssa. But for me, the fact that Fran has been there doing the agenda setting meetings has made a difference. Is there another factor there? No, I think Fran's expressed it well. I think that Fran, doesn't have as much experience in running meetings, but that we are all here to, staff and board members are here to support the chair, and I think we will continue to do that. David or Alyssa, have any thoughts you want to share? Yeah, that would be more orderly, but that's just me.
I can jump in.
Okay.
So I think that any of the five of us would serve well as chair, definitely differently, with different priorities and different leadership styles. I'm leaning toward having the political minority among us leading us next year because of the political climate in town. And I know that we are a nonpartisan board, but we are certainly facing an electorate that was pretty much evenly split on the budget process and the ballot question. And I know that Dean has not only experience, but a particular focus on the segment of the population that I think was, I don't know, I didn't look at each individual ballot because that is a private thing, but just talking with people leading up to the election, I got the sense that the majority of folks who were against the override were our seniors, and I know that Dean is consistently looking out for them and in communication with them and serving as the liaison to the Council on Aging. So I think that it would be good as a unifying gesture to have Dean be our chair next year.
Thanks, Alyssa. David, any comments?
No, I don't really have a comment. I'm kind of split. I see, advantages to both Fran and Dean, so I'm not exactly at this point sure how I'll vote, but I have to decide, I suppose, in the next minute or so.
Can you think of anything that would help you make your mind up, or just taking some time?
No, it's just, weighing the advantages of each candidate and the situation, Fran hasn't been chair, and it's nice. I think it makes for a stronger board to mix it up a little bit. On the other hand, Alyssa makes some points, and also Dean has the experience being chair, so that's also an advantage. So. Not exactly sure how they weigh out. So.
Please.
I don't suppose it's allowed to have co-chairs on the select board?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
We do have, a vice chair. Yeah, I think that's the closest we have. So asking our volunteer parliamentarian again, David, what do we then go through each candidate and see how many votes they get? Or do we ask which candidate each person will vote for?
I think we ask each candidate who they'll vote for.
Mm-hmm.
We would only do it by affirmation if there was just one candidate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So here you'd ask everybody, or have the clerk ask everybody, and then we just say a name.
Great. So, hey, Mr. Clerk, why don't you ask everybody who they would be voting for chair this year, and we'll find out if we have 3 votes for somebody.
Okay. I will move from left to right. Yep. Sorry. I will move from left to right down the table. Mr. Trotter. Mr. Trotter will vote for Mr. Trotter. Ms. Arsenal.
Fran Arsenal.
Mr. Snyder Grant.
Fran Arsenault.
Mr. Martin.
I'll vote for Fran as well.
Ms. Nickel.
Mr. Charter.
And how does that vote read?
So it's a 3-2.
Okay.
We have a new chair.
Great. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And thanks for everyone and thanks, Dean, for nominating yourself and allowing us to have a deeper conversation. Now we would be looking at nominations for vice chair. Ooh.
So,
So at this point, normally I would start stepping back at this point. You willing to take us through the process of finding a vice chair and a clerk?
no, you can stay.
Just work for my life.
That's fine, that's fine. Next time, but it's all yours. It's all yours, take it away.
So I guess we're going to do the same process. And each member will either nominate whomever they'd like to see as vice chair. And Dean, you can start from left.
I will. Okay.
I will nominate Mr. Charter.
I was not going to nominate myself. I actually had somebody else in mind who shook her head vigorously no. I would accept vice chair, if that's a nomination.
Great, that's one nominee.
I would nominate myself.
I would nominate Alyssa Nickel.
I respectfully decline.
Oh, I don't have any nominations to add to the fine set of nominations that have already been made. Although to have a lively discussion, I will happily second David's nomination, since I don't think we got a second there.
So should we hear from each individual who would like to say a few words?
Okay, I'll start at my end. Yeah, I would be happy to serve as vice chair. I think I've worked well in that role on 2 occasions in the past. And I'd be happy to provide whatever assistance I can to the new chair.
David?
Thank you. So I haven't held an officer position since I was chair several years ago, and my tenure as chair was the shortened year because I started during the summer in the pandemic, and I ended early because we had earlier elections than we have now. But I would love to be vice chair. I think Fran could, provide you with any information that you thought you needed and be happy to back you up on whatever you thought. And so, anyway.
Thank you. Alyssa?
I think I will stand by what I said earlier in having one of the minority voices as one of the 2 top officers on the board. I think that will be good for the community and for the board as well.
Thank you. Jim?
I had a question. Dean, do you know anything about your travel schedule next year? One of the things I noted that you were able to do, not being an officer, was have some good travel time. And I just wanted to make sure that, you were going to be around for, generous portion of the year.
The cruise lines are all going to go broke. I'm not traveling next year.
Thank you. Then, for the same reasons articulated by Alyssa, I think probably makes more sense to have Dean as vice chair this year. Plus, he's been vice chair 2 times before, so he can do it in his sleep.
Should we individually, take our votes?
Okay, Dean Trotter. Votes for Dean Trotter for vice chair.
I vote for David Martin.
I'll vote for Dean Charter.
I'll vote for me.
And I will vote for Mr. Charter.
Okay, we got a 3-2. We have a vice chair.
I'm going to get a lot. I have to get used to this. So now we will take on the role of clerk. And is anyone willing to take on the duties of the clerk?
I'm happy to nominate myself for clerk.
I'll second.
And do you want to hear from me?
Pardon me?
Do you want to hear from me?
Sure.
So I was expecting a nomination for clerk since Dean nominated me last year and I declined as it was my first year on the board. But I have a feeling that I might be the one who submits the most suggested edits to the minutes, so I might as well be clerk.
Thank you. David, do you have a, nope. Dean?
I think Alyssa would make a fine clerk. She's served in that role in a number of other committees.
Same here. Alyssa? Yeah.
So this one you could do by affirmation, just all in favor of Alyssa as
Okay.
clerk, say aye, or you could have us go down and say our names, whichever you'd like.
Sure. All in favor of Alyssa taking on the clerk role, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. I say aye. I forgot to say aye. On to the next, number 4, presentation of the Acton 2020 implementation update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a project that the planning staff have been working on and off for a long time. And with the former chair, we had been coordinating an update to the board just to give you a sense of where we're at and how this goes forward. Any input you have at this point in the process. And Kayla, our senior planner, is here to walk us through where we are and where we'd like to go with this 2020 plan. Thanks.
Hi, good evening, members of the board. Kayla Sauer, Senior Planner. Tom, if you wouldn't mind sharing the slides. Once again, good evening. I'm here tonight to share action item updates to the Acton 2020 Community Comprehensive Plan and an outline proposed process moving forward. I do want to stress that the spreadsheet in your packet tonight is still being updated. It is not finished, so just make that note. For those unfamiliar, the Acton 2020 Community Comprehensive Plan is the primary planning document for the town. Despite some misconceptions that the plan is outdated because of the name, Acton 2020, we are currently 12 years into the 15 to 20-year plan. A comprehensive plan is a decision-making tool to be used by town officials and residents to express a desired future and the steps that lead there. The purpose of the Acton 2020 plan is ultimately about how to create a better community and covers a whole range of different elements, including land use, recreation, transportation, and housing, just to name a few. These are reflected in the plan's 7 goals and corresponding objectives. Acton 2020 has 7 overarching goals with corresponding strategies, objectives, and action items. The 7 goals are preserve and enhance town character, ensure environmental stability, improve connections, provide more opportunities for gathering and recreation, support diversity and inclusion, preserve and enhance town-owned assets and services, and maintain and improve the town's financial well-being. So we'll now take a high-level snapshot of each goal. So the first goal, preserve and enhance town character. And this is going to be a little repetitive, so bear with me. So this goal consisted of 36 action items. Of those action items, 12 are considered always in progress, 8 are currently and actively in progress, and 7 are completed. The colors noted here correspond directly to the colors on the spreadsheet in your packet. Some highlights that stemmed from action items where we have now hired an economic development director. The town has worked with the state to conduct infrastructure improvements to Kelly's Corner, which is planned to be complete in 2025. And while not a specific action item, we are embarking on the Habitat for All zoning initiative, which will actually help address many action items in Goal 1 and also throughout the plan. So the second goal is ensure environmental sustainability. So this goal consisted of 64 action items, the most in the entire plan. So of those action items, 36 are always in progress, 4 are currently and actively in progress, and 10 are completed. Some highlights include the town has hired a sustainability director and environmental analyst who have definitely helped contribute to the number of always in progress that these goals are in. The town has also worked with the Acton Water District to update our groundwater protection zones to ensure they match, and a climate action plan has been adopted that monitors Acton's carbon footprint, but also addresses many other action items noted in Goal 2 specifically. So 3 is improve connections. This goal consisted of 37 action items. Of those action items, 19 are always in progress, 4 are currently in progress, and 10 are completed. Some highlights include Acton's portions of the Aspet River Rail Trail and Bruce Freeman Rail Trail have been completed. We are actually now at the stage of going beyond what the action item intended since they're complete, so we're now working on improvements such as wayfinding and bike racks that you now see along the Bruce Freeman. 19 to 21 Maple Street was purchased for additional parking for the commuter station, which was an action item, and Crosstown Connect has since been implemented and runs a shuttle service between some of our neighboring towns. 4 is provide more opportunities for gathering recreation. So this goal consists of 20 action items. 10 are always in progress, 1 is currently in progress, and 6 are completed. Highlights include the Human Services Center, which is now at 30 Sudbury Road, wasn't there at the time of plan adoption. Both Jones Field Playground and Gardner Playground have been renovated and improved. And one that was already in progress and will always remain in progress and improved upon, our 22 land stewards, with the help of our land stewardship coordinator and many volunteers, help manage the town's 1,700 acres of conservation lands. So 5 is support diversity and inclusion. This goal consists of 35 action items. Of those action items, 20 are always in progress, 3 are currently in progress, and 4 are completed. Some highlights include a housing production plan, which was adopted in 2020, with an update planned for 2025. The town has also hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer to help further many of these action items. And the town has worked with our 13 surrounding communities in the Magic region to make our communities, including Acton, an age-friendly community, which makes Acton a more welcoming and livable community for all ages. Sorry, I'm getting over an illness, so I'm out of breath. Thank you. So 6, preserve and enhance town-owned assets and services. So this goal consists of 18 action items, 12 are always in progress, 2 are completed. Some highlights include kindergarten through grade 6 are regionalized in the AB school district. Over 150 acres of land have been preserved since 2012. using a wide variety of techniques, such as donation, purchasing, even the collaboration with the Acton Water District for 549 Main Street. And 17 Woodbury Lane, over in the parking lot, is undergoing plans for repurposing the building to actually be able to utilize this building. And so finally, we are at Goal 7, which is maintain and improve the town's financial well-being. So this consisted of 25 action items, 18 are always in progress, and 4 are complete. Highlights include a 10-year capital improvement plan that has been implemented since plan adoption and is now updated annually. $2 million in grants are utilized yearly to help alleviate taxpayer investment, and OPEB, other post-employment benefits, is expected to be fully funded by 2037, which, according to our finance department, is pretty ahead of what others are doing for that. So that's exciting. So to take a look at the big picture progress, at this time, 190 action items of the 235 in the plan are completed or in progress. I do want to note, as stated in my memo, that some items we just currently do not have updates for at this time, just for the timing to get here tonight, post-town meeting. It's been a busy time, so this number is likely higher. There's just some active blanks in the spreadsheet. I also do want to note, as you look through the categorizations of the action items, that some are definitely fluid on what it is considered, and so they can definitely be classified differently based on who's looking at it, so I welcome any suggestions on that. And so tonight, I'm here to hear any feedback from the select board. We timed this presentation to be before your annual goal setting meeting to see if any action items were of interest to board at that time. Like I said, any revisions, additions, or recategorizations of the action items is welcome. There are a lot of moving factors to get these updates here tonight. But moving forward, we are proposing bi-yearly update presentations. It'll probably be a little bit less encompassing and more specific to what's happened in the last 6 months at that time. So the next one will be proposed for at the end of this year. And I do plan on housing that spreadsheet that is in your packet on some form on the website. I'll let you guys know when that's up and send you guys the link. And then finally, the planning division is proposing a new comprehensive plan process to begin in fiscal year 2028, which is summer 2027, so 3 years from now. As stated previously, Acton 2020, we're about 12 years into the 15 to 20 year lifespan, so that'll take us right up to the 15-year mark. And then we expect that engagement process to be about 2 years, so it would be about 17 years since the last plan was adopted. So thank you. Happy to hear any comments or questions from the board tonight.
Thank you, Kayla, so much. It's so nice to see the goals and what you've achieved, what the town has achieved, and keeping track of those goals and moving forward to the future. I just had a question about the bi-yearly meetings or presentations. Would that be just from different town departments, or?
I expect that we would give the update, but how we kind of structured it this time, like John said, this has been going on for a while, but how we started the process was actually reaching out to the owners of who the action item was assigned to, and getting updates directly from them. As time went on, we just kind of had to provide updates based off of what we know. But so the idea is that we would be reaching out to the owners of each action item, especially the ones that are blank right now, and making sure we get a comprehensive update. And I think moving forward, by the time we get to 2027, this would ideally be like the first part of the new comprehensive plan with very clear and inclusive, like what actually happened, and really explain each action item. So some of them were a little bit vague, like just say completed. We'd probably elaborate on those more at that time.
Thank you. Jim?
This is bringing back all sorts of fond memories of the Acton 2020 process. So I was vice chair during one of those phases. And first of all, I do remember very clearly as we were getting near the end of the process that we wanted to we changed some of the language to talk about the target end date being the decade of the 2020s. So that we even understood at that time that this was not a plan that would stop at 2020. The process question I have for your thoughts is, so the plan is the plan. We're not here to change the plan, because that's what happens in a few years. But I wonder about what happens around the edges. We have we have there's the disbanded, so the players seem to be the disbanded Acton 2020 Implementation Committee, which doesn't really exist anymore, but could be revived if it was useful. The Planning Board, which is responsible under state law for the creation of a comprehensive plan. Then there's us on the Select Board. Then there's you guys on the planning staff. And so, given all those players, I'm a little unclear what we do with these undone items. Like there's the one that caught my eye, all the way at the bottom was about, when back then when we thought, hey, let's extend the natural gas lines. That's a good idea. And, as you noted here, it's no longer consistent with our current policy direction. But is there a process for affirming that together? And what do you think that process might be?
That's a great question. I think that we would take that direction from the select board. That's kind of how we've done this process. So if you have any suggested language we could include, like you said, the plan wouldn't be changed, but I think where we could kind of incorporate what we're doing is in the updates, like how we want to move forward with that and move away from something, for example, or if it's revive something, a number of those items were attempted and failed. And if you wanted to revive them, how you wanted to move forward. And I see that as an opportunity during your goal setting. If there's something that you want to make very clear that that's either not your policy direction or you want to revive it as a policy direction, to do it at that time. But happy to hear other thoughts from you all.
Oh, Jim, yeah.
Yeah, in particular, I'm curious about the planning board. And if you had any thoughts about how they might be involved.
Yeah, it's a great question. We could definitely bring this to the planning board and have them also house it. Additionally, typically they've had us bring the updates to them. So that's something that we could do just like we're doing to you also, to hear their thoughts.
David?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think since through the town manager, the select board, is drives town staff on to work on these items. I would say and encourage if the planning board had any input on any of them, that they should let the select board know either through an email or a presentation if they'd like, or coming to a meeting to talk about it.
Dean?
Yeah, first I'd like to thank you and whoever else was involved in it in producing that really nice spreadsheet, because it makes the information much easier to access. And I'm suggesting to my colleagues on the board that, over the next few weeks, we should go through that spreadsheet, take a look at particular items you're particularly interested in, and we could bring those up in our goal-setting process. I personally would hope that, we'd have a somewhat smaller list of goals this year than we have in the past, although it is like eating peanuts, isn't it? But I think that might be a way that, if we saw something that resonated with the majority of us as a goal, and then we could communicate that with the town manager and the planning staff to look at something like, this is something we think you should put some resources into and get some input that way. I think, the timing works out fairly well.
Alyssa?
I have a lot to say about this. First of all, thank you, Kayla. And I could see who was providing the updates in the language that was there. So I appreciate everybody who provided updates on progress. I especially appreciate having this ahead of the goal setting session. I have a question, I think, for the board. Before I was on the board, I came to almost every select board meeting for a couple of years. I don't remember ever seeing such an update. Have they been done in the past? No. Oh. You want to correct that?
Sorry, John?
Yeah, the chair helped us, encouraged us to bring this forward. It is something that, of course, the planning staff had been working on, but it had never been surfaced the way it is tonight, so.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense that it was obviously referred to by pretty much everybody in town, the boards and committees, and also residents when they were arguing for or against anything. I think, Dean, you said it's like the Bible. You can find anything in the comprehensive community plan to support your position, your interpretation of something, whether or not it's in alignment with the master plan or not. But I like this formal update here. Here we are, here's how far we've come, and here's what we can continue working on. This is the first time that I'm hearing that this is a 15 to 20-year plan, because I was one of those people who thought it was out of date since it's named the 2020 plan. I actually was disappointed to see that the proposal is to not take it up until FY '28, and so I was curious, how long does a community plan, a master plan, typically cover what range? Because obviously, long-range planning is so critical, and yet our housing production plan is every 5 years. Our open space plan is every 7 years. So the MAPC, Metropolitan Area Planning Council, has a guide to creating these plans, and they say 10 to 15 years. So it's a little bit shorter. So I'm just going to say that I'd like it to start sooner, but obviously I know that I can't dictate that, given our resources are probably limited. When I went through it, I did write down a lot of additions that I thought, oh, we also did this. So I have 2 pages. Who do I send that to?
Please send them to planning.
Okay, I will do that.
Be happy for that.
And I actually copied the action items.
Oh,
so
thank you.
You shouldn't have to dig. Some of them were questions, but most of them were, oh, don't forget about this great thing we did too. There were a couple of things that were mentioned that I've never seen, and I'd like to, if you can provide them. I didn't know what the Commuter Rail Coalition is. I've never seen the regional age-friendly plan before, so if that's living somewhere, if you could send me a link. And I think that there was one other plan that was mentioned that I was hoping I could get a copy of. Nope, it might be just those 2. But one last question, if I may, Madam Chair. Yes. I'm wondering, how can we coordinate more closely with the school district? I didn't know if so many of those were blank because they haven't given you the information yet, or if there's a lack of progress. I know that the sustainability director and the energy manager are often in communication, but I read that there's a sustainability subcommittee, and it's made up of town staff rather than volunteers. So I'm wondering if school staff could be invited to be part of that, and maybe we would make some more progress if there is actually lack of progress rather than just a lack of an update from the school committee.
Yeah, if I could be honest, I haven't asked for an update. So that's one of those ones that's blank because I haven't reached out to the schools yet. So that would be top priority going forward. And the sustainability subcommittee, I am on it. We can definitely talk and see if the schools make sense to include on it. It is focused on like town hall and the memorial library, but we can see if it makes sense for that too. Oh, and then about the date of the plan. Happy to hear if the board, if you wanted it pushed up, that's something that we would take into consideration. There'll be significant funding needed for it, but we can, do that for the next budget process, and also we could supplement it with grants. So happy to hear your thoughts on that too.
Sure.
Thank you. So one of the reasons for my disappointment is that I know that the Habitat for All planning process is happening. We got a grant for creating an economic development plan, and I felt like that should happen concurrently, because what I appreciated so much about the South Acton Vision process was that it combined the MBTA with updating the South Acton Village Master Plan, and people, this is something that I hear frequently, that people really want us to do comprehensive planning. So it doesn't seem quite right to do another zoning effort with Habitat for All, and then an economic development plan, which is actually required to be part of the community plan according to state law, first, and then tackle. I'd rather them happen together because that seems more cohesive and comprehensive.
John?
Yeah, thank you. Those are good questions and ideas. I think we see, at least, and it's of course open to further direction, but we see the economic development plan and the renewal of the housing production plan, which is also something we'll need to do, as two primary source documents that can help contribute to the next version of the community plan, rather than try to do them all at once. And so I think, getting a sense of where we are with the 2020 plan gives us a good kind of check-in, and then we can attack these specific major parts of the future plan, which would be the housing production, economic development, and the climate action, which we did last year, or the year before. Those components, Habitat for all those things can continue to build up a new base for what the group that's assigned at the time, and we certainly can move it up a year or two, but that's our thinking, is that it contributes to instead of coincides with.
Jim, yeah.
So I wanted to answer one of Alyssa's questions, or try to, about why we hadn't seen an update in a while. And part of that was that there was an Acton 2020 implementation committee, which was, in a sense, you could think of it as starting off with this kind of spreadsheet, and they were looking at, what needs to be done next and making recommendations. But that committee, unfortunately, what happened historically was that they then launched, then there was this Kelly's Corner Committee that was launched. Key people from the Acton 2020 Implementation Committee were brought into the Kelly's Corner planning work, and the 2020 Implementation Committee really lost steam. So it was sort of, we sort of lost, I feel like we lost the clear citizen involvement in the 2020 follow-up process, which I've been sad about from time to time, and expressed that sadness to John, which is part of what he's referring to when he's saying, well, the previous chair was pushing for this. It was, I did feel like there needed to be a sort of revitalization of the, community involvement in the community plan. And this seems like, this is a good start. And what was one other part? Yeah, it's fled. I'm just glad we're getting started on this.
Alyssa?
I told you I had a lot. So the explanation that John just provided makes a lot of sense, that the updated housing production plan, the economic development plan, those will inform the comprehensive community plan. I guess I would add that, in response to what Jim said about an implementation committee, that maybe the select board might want to give some strong encouragement to the planning board to take over some of that implementation committee, like, find ways to jumpstart anything that has been left behind, forgotten about, that is not out of alignment with current policy, of course, since the planning board is responsible for planning in town, and this is their document, and they will take the lead on the update. It might make sense for them to take over some of those responsibilities. And I know they have a lot on their plate, but I've also heard some criticisms that sometimes planning board meetings get canceled if there are no development project proposals on the docket. So maybe they do have some time where they could put this in as an agenda item to examine the progress and identify how they can prod the owners to get going on some of the items that have not actually been started yet or are lagging in progress.
Thank you. Any more discussion or?
Just some response. So what has happened historically in the last couple of plans is that the planning board has its authority and has asked the planning staff to actually, implement the process of creating a community plan, which is typically done by, calling together a committee, and there's a member or two from the planning board who is on that committee, and that's very important, so that they can get, feedback as time goes by, and there's, also a select board member on that. The other thing that happened, so that's one part. The other part is, one thing that I was hoping for out of the last process is that we did have all these, pieces of individual plans. And we started thinking through how these different areas, had sort of, would compete with each other sometimes. Sometimes an economic development goal competes with a, protecting open space goal. We talked about that a lot, but it was hard to find a way to put that to really get that discussion going and put it into the plan. Basically, where we ended up with was that if there was a proposed, so there were layers here. There were goals and objectives and something else, and then action items. If we found one of those that seemed clearly in contradiction or competition with a goal or an action item or an objective from a whole other area, we would question it. So wonder, maybe this is not the one we should bring forward. Maybe this doesn't really express the overall will of the town because, we care about both these things. So that began to happen. It's the kind of thing I can imagine happening, that if we have all these plans as bases, which I think is a wise idea, the housing production plan, the economic development plan, the OSRP, then one of the jobs of the committee can be to help, knit those together, find the places of where they don't fit well together and promote public conversation and agreement on those areas. And I'm also fine with the notion of trying to bring this process forward, another year if we possibly can. That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Kayla, thank you so much. And I think we'll just look forward to more info in the future.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And number 5 is debrief elections and town meeting. No, I don't have.
So, thank you. It seems like the board members may have a lot to say, but I'm happy to fill in any gaps or answer any questions. But I thought both, regardless of the outcomes, I thought both were a huge success operationally, and I couldn't be prouder of the way that the team and the volunteers and everyone else implemented the town meeting in particular. And I think it's really a testament to the people that want to participate in this process, where in other communities, you have to really rely on election workers and hope for the best. Here, we have people coming out of the woodworks to try to help, and they all do a really nice job. So I'm proud to be a part of this.
Mr. Manager, I'm wondering if this would be an appropriate time, if you'd be prepared to respond to a couple of the comments that was brought up by Scott Smyers. No, he's not here, but I think some of the issues, questions about the use of the clickers and the one remote participant, I think, whatever light you can shed on that. I know my understanding of these things, but I would defer to you on those.
Sure, happy to discuss a couple of those things. With regards to the remote participant, that was an accommodation that was made, that was requested from an individual eligible for such accommodations. It was the first time that we've ever done it, so we weren't sure ourselves whether it was something that we were allowed to do, and we checked with the state and our town council, and they both determined that it was appropriate given the circumstance. So it's something that now that we know about, we'll do a better job of telling other people about, just to make sure that we're providing opportunities for anyone, as many people as possible, to attend and participate in town meetings. And I'm happy to fill in more on that afterwards. And the other question was about clickers. The experts on that are not here tonight, and I can follow up with a more detailed answer, but my understanding is, well, I know that each clicker has a unique ID, and you could vote as many times as you want, but it's only going to record it once. I am not sure whether I assume it's the last one you do, but I know that you can't vote multiple times, even if you try. They thought of that already a long time ago, I guess. And there were concerns about the security of that system, which we did address a few years ago, which I think was mentioned earlier. And we think that there's probably things we could look to do in the future, but that system was secure and worked well that night. And like I said before, I'm proud of the way that it was implemented, because it wasn't as easy as it looked. I can tell you that much. What else did he ask?
About the late bus?
I don't know the specific details on that, but I think that the people that were waiting on the bus were coming from one of the satellite lots, and I think that they got there. I actually was at the senior center last week, and I talked about this that day as well. I took a shuttle bus myself. I was at the commuter rail at 5:30, and I think we started running all afternoon through that time. And I think the people that were on that bus might have gotten to that location much later than the start of the meeting, which is why they were not there when the meeting started and why they were waiting to get here. Perhaps the bus didn't go back to that remote lot at the time that they were there, but I think that's the best I can do on that one. I think that was all of them. Thanks.
Alyssa?
I just wanted to say that I am super proud of our record turnout. I'm proud of our electorate. I'm really proud that they followed instructions and showed up early. There were people who arrived at the high school at 5:30 to make sure they got a parking space and a seat in the auditorium. I know that that was not possible for everybody coming back from Boston or getting kids fed or into bed, whatever. So I'm just really proud of the community that everyone, okay, maybe not everyone, but most people were very understanding of the enormity of the challenge and how mostly smoothly it ran. If you had to park in a remote satellite location and take a shuttle bus, and if you had to find your way to one of the overflow rooms, and the deputy moderators, I only heard positive feedback about what a phenomenal job they did, and some of them were, handling mini crises and fires and chaos. And so I really appreciate the good humor and patience from most people. One thing that I wanted to comment about the elections, and actually David and I talked about this, so he may have already passed along this feedback to staff, but I'd like to see better signage at the polling locations. I think we used to have sandwich boards down on Mass Ave, right at the two entrances to the junior high, and also near the location, because there's a lot of doors to the junior high, and there's a lot of different choices for where you can park there. So it'd be great. I mean, the people who are standing with their signs for candidates and ballot questions, they are always helpful in directing people who don't know what entrance to go in, but it would be great to have just more directional signage at the polling place. But another phenomenal job by all of the poll workers who were working during the election. And one other comment I wanted to make about accessibility for town meeting, I was very excited to have a remote participant, and I think that went really smoothly. I did notice during many of the presentations that people were not always using accessible language for folks who cannot see the slides, either vision issues or maybe people who are at town meeting who are blind. I heard a lot of, as you can see on the slide. So I think maybe we can work with the moderator who can work with presenters to improve accessibility auditory for people who have a difficult time seeing the slides. And I also heard in the overflow rooms that they didn't have very large screens. So even people who don't have vision issues might have had a difficult time seeing the screen, seeing the slides. So kudos to us all.
Thank you. Dean?
And just to follow up a little bit on the accessibility issue, I think, obviously this was an unusual circumstance. I don't expect that we'll see that kind of a turnout at town meeting again anytime soon. And I appreciate the fact that the town brought in shuttle buses and that sort of thing. But I think if you do this again and you start running these shuttle buses, I think it's very important to make sure that the access points for loading and unloading the shuttle buses does not conflict with things like handicapped access ramps for the rest of the folks that can't step off a curb or climb up a curb. So I think, this is just a fairly simple adjustment that could be made that I think, maybe if we get involved in this again, might want to engage more with the Commission on Disabilities and, walk the site a little bit and figure out where these access points are going to be made so you're not parking a shuttle bus right on top of a handicap ramp. So I think, if somebody just wants to make a note of that for next year, I'd appreciate it.
And I just want to give a shout out to our awesome town moderator. She was incredible, and even the long time between voting, she was very entertaining, and and for a town meeting that I thought was going to be a lot more contentious, it was like a good feeling, I thought. Jim?
Some thoughts. So some of this stuff we'll be covering later, at future meetings, but just to sort of make a marker for it now. The meaning of having the override vote be so close, I think calls on us to, I think there's some actions that come out of that. One that I've heard from a member of the select board is to have some kind of, citizen involvement in looking at if there are structural, sort of longer term or trickier changes that would result in more efficiencies in town government. This is an ongoing process that the town manager's been engaged in from day one as to how to, be more efficient and effective. But given the closeness of the vote, it may be wise for us to, open up that process discussion more to create a greater sense of, transparency and knowledge about, how we get things done and how much money they cost. So that was that one part. In terms of the town meeting, I think we usually have an agenda item at some time between now and the agenda setting meeting to sort of review the results of town meeting to see if there's anything that impacts what we do. And the main one that seems, very clear is that we were given the responsibility to work on the gas leaf blower bylaw. So that will presumably require some discussion on the part of the board about how to do that. Looking forward to that. What else? I think it was astonishing that we had a meeting as smooth as it was with that many people there. I was astonished to learn that it had been the largest turnout at town meeting that anyone can recall. The records go back a ways, but even the huge marijuana discussion, which was, dragged down by the fact that we just couldn't check in people quick enough because there were so many people showing up. And this is before my time, but, the stories I hear about, an earlier gun control discussion many years ago, back in the Greg Jarboe area, and the leash law, the leash law discussion, which was also, a couple of thousand people. All of those were much more chaotic than this. And that's because, town staff did the planning and, got lots of people involved and figured out what it would take to, have all these overflow rooms. And it was just an astonishing bit of logistics. I just wanted to appreciate that a lot. I don't know how soon we'll have another meeting like that, but we could. I had conversations with people explaining the difference between open town meeting and representative town meeting and city council and mayor and, all the sort of options we have as a town, because it wouldn't work to have, let's say, half of the voters show up. Yeah. So if we had 9,000 people show up, we would not be able to proceed. So it made me think that we may be approaching the shadow of the end of the open town meeting era. Not anytime super soon, but I think this kind of brought it home for me. How the size of our voting population doesn't really match up with the open meeting model. What else? I was also really heartened to see the remote participation, and really looking forward to seeing the sort of rules and regulations spelled out, because we didn't really have time for that this time, about what kind of, disability or, other need calls for, allowing and arranging for remote participation. I'm really glad the town was able to scramble and make that happen this time. And I look forward to, seeing that written out and publicized, because I think some people are thinking it means, if I can't find a babysitter, I can just zoom into open town meeting, and that's not what this is about. This is about people who, physically, medically can't be at town meeting, and how to accommodate them. Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa?
I just have one more quick thing, because Jim and Jaw sold something in my brain. I know we're going to talk about this more probably during our goal setting, but in terms of the result on the ballot question being so close, and the Finance Committee's request that we form a task force, I have been asking folks, who should we tap for this? And the responses have been what you would expect: former select board members, former school committee members, people who were on the last task force, which is great. But I just would encourage all of you to go out into the community and ask the same question and see if we can get, Jim said citizen participation. Not that all of those people aren't citizens, but participation from folks who might be retired executives with financial acumen, and not only people who are very familiar and have been involved in the town and the way the town operates, and the way the budget process is for 20, 30, 40 years, because I think that fresh eyes would be really useful, folks who aren't attached to any particular program or way of doing things or protocol, and they might just suggest some innovative solutions or ask some questions that other people who have been involved for decades wouldn't necessarily think of. So anybody who's listening, if you are one of those people or know of people to suggest, please reach out to the board, because it would be nice to have a good list of candidates by the time we get to our goal setting, if the creation of a task force does rise to the top of that list.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can make a task force if we want without it being a goal. We can create permanent committees without it being a goal. But I think before we start recruiting people, we need to figure out what the scope and structure of what this committee would be, right? I think it's putting the cart before the horse to start recruiting people when we don't even know what the thing is yet. And that requires a discussion on the part of the board to decide what it is.
Thank you. Any more discussion on town meeting or? Should we move on to number 6?
Thank you. So number 6, one of the things approved at town meeting was the construction of the new fuel depot for the Public Works facility. As mentioned over the last few months and at town meeting, one of the organizations that uses that fuel depot is Case Transportation Services, which has anywhere from 70 to 100 buses, smaller buses that they fuel up to take students all over the region for services. Anyways, we have been working with them. It's a board of directors made up of superintendents from the area schools, and they have an executive director, and we've been working with them over the last 3 months to negotiate a license agreement, which would provide them the opportunity to use the new fuel depot, and as part of that, they have agreed to contribute towards the capital improvement costs. So in the packet, I hope, is the license agreement that we've negotiated, and I'm asking the board to approve it, and certainly would be willing to and happy to answer any questions if that's helpful.
Thanks, John. Alyssa?
So I think that the MOA, the memorandum of agreement, looks fine. I just have a question that I feel like I know the answer to, but it would just be great to have it said out loud for the board and the public. This does not include the cost of fueling, correct? So if you're a bus driver and you go to fill up, you're paying the town for the fuel that we put in the tanks?
Thank you. That's a good question that really should be surfaced. So the way it works now, and the way that it's going to work under this agreement, is that the case operations, that they have a board, they have an executive director, they also have an operations person and staff. That organization will be in charge of ordering their own fuel, so they bring their own fuel tanker to fill up our pumps. It's probably the same one, but they pay for it, is the point. So they pay for their own bulk fuel. We just provide the infrastructure. And part of the agreement is that if we need to make major changes to the way we administer it, like the technology, for example, they would participate in those changes. But the fuel that they buy directly. Does that answer the question?
You definitely, yes.
Yes, thank you. So they're bringing a tanker to fill up the tank, and then they're filling their vehicles, and this is an exact number of gallons that fills those vehicles? What happens if there's some left over in the tank and a police cruiser comes in?
Yeah, and that is a question that I was hoping we could explore by reducing the number of tanks to just 1 or 2, but we're realistically having multiple tanks in there. They have their own tank that they fill up and use. We have a diesel tank that we fill up and use. The school district, the Acton Boxborough School District, has a diesel tank that they fill up and use. and we have a unleaded gas tank that we fill up and use. So I would have preferred to just have two and we share it, but then what you just asked about is complications that I guess people didn't want to deal with. And there was other reasons too. So no, it's pretty clean now, and it's going to be pretty clean going forward.
Any other questions? I'm on board with this too. I just thanks for raising that question, Alyssa. I thought somehow having the key card kind of controlled that monetarily, but.
It does. So we do have access control, but they participate in that access control. So it's not just anyone can go up there and fill up a tank. They have to use the access control system. I should also mention the dollar figure. It's $500,000 over a 3-year period that they would contribute, which is a pretty good portion of the capital cost. So it makes sense, and we're excited that they agreed to it, and I hope the board approves it.
Thank you. And Alyssa?
Okay. So I guess I do have one last comment to thank John for doing this negotiation to have some help with the expense of this infrastructure. And then I move to approve the license agreement with Concord Area Special Education Collaborative for use of the fuel depot.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to number 7, approve letters of support for one-stop program grant applications.
Thank you. So this is something that we do every year. More than that, we do it more frequently than every year. We constantly are applying for grants. And anytime you have a grant that the select board submits a letter of support for, it just gives that extra show of support right at the beginning for a project. So we have 4 or 5 projects that we're submitting as part of this MassWorks Community One. Basically, the state combined all their grants into one program they call the Community One Stop for Growth. And that includes MassWorks, it includes Housing Choice, it includes some other planning ones that we've been successful getting in the past. And so we're submitting these grants, I think it's due next week, and we're asking the board to support them. I'm happy to talk through each of them. One is to seek financial support for the infrastructure improvements associated with implementing the West Acton Village Streetscape Plan, which is a process that we conducted this past year, I think with ARPA funding, to do an engineering study, and we had community forums and open houses, and that resulted in a plan for ways to make that area more pedestrian friendly and more multimodal transportation friendly. That plan is not funded in the capital plan, so of course we'd work it in over the next 10 years, but we thought we'd get a head start if possible with a MassWorks grant. The other projects, one is there was a lot of talk about MBTA zoning this past town meeting. It was supported overwhelmingly by town meeting voters, but there is a desire from the staff level, and I believe it's shared at the board level, but I guess this would be a good time to check on that, to investigate whether including more of an affordability component going forward is feasible. And that's not something that was part of the original scope for what we just brought to town meeting, but we did commit to wanting to look at that, and we're asking for funding to help with that project. Another item that we'd ask for funding for is to do an update to our housing production plan, which is a community engagement process that I felt like we just finished it, but apparently we need to update it. And if we got support from the state to do that, it's one less thing that we have to try to find funding for. The final thing that we're seeking support for the state for is pump stations. Our system is 20 years old. Those pump stations were put in 20 years ago, and they need to be replaced. It's part of our long It's part of our plan to upgrade the treatment plant, and if you remember, right at the peak of when things were very expensive, that's when we went out to bid on the treatment plant rehab project, and we had bundled the pump stations in with it. It was deemed to be too expensive to do it all at once, so now we've been sort of just chipping away at the pump stations. We're asking here, the state, if they'd be willing to support those pump station replacements projects as they support state goals, economic development, housing, and they also help just with our maintaining our infrastructure, which they also have seemed to be interested in. So those are the 5 projects. In terms of the amounts that we're seeking, we're going to just ask for as much as possible for each of them, and whatever the amount is, that we need.
Thank you, John. Any input from Alyssa?
Thank you. So I had a suggested edit for the pump station. And I'm sorry, I don't remember what paragraph this is in, but it talks about conveying the majority of the town's wastewater to the WWTF, wastewater treatment facility. And I think that it would be more accurate to say the majority of the district's wastewater to the wastewater treatment facility, since only, I don't know, 10% of the town is in the district. And then there were just a couple of typos. The first line on the second page, reliable should be reliably. And the final paragraph, projects, should have an apostrophe in it. And I had one question. It mentions sanitary sewer overflow. Is that a possibility with the current system's design? Does that happen? Could that happen? I thought it was not one of the systems that could overflow during a storm event.
Well, I think you're probably right, but I think this also helps prevent it, whatever we're doing here. Right?
Okay, well, if it's not possible, then I don't know how accurate it is to say that this protects from a sanitary sewer overflow, but David might have, do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, so you always have to design these things so that they might, right? Even if they never do. I mean, you have to know where the water will go if it comes. Suppose the Assabet River went. Into my house. Well, no, it's actually more likely some, Fort Prawn Brook somehow, went into a broken main and, put down so much water down the sewer mains that the sewer plant could not take it. It has to be designed to go somewhere. Or the Assabet River exceeds its banks by, 1,000-year flood, right? And so, anyway, it has to be designed for that, even if you try to have it never happen, but just in case.
Okay, I thought it was a physical impossibility because there wasn't a connection like there is, in Boston in some places. And then, can I go to the inclusionary zoning? Sure. So I'm wondering why we're using the 2018 median single-family home value, because there is a more recent data point, and also the MBTA zoning incentivizes multifamily rather than single-family. And I looked on census.gov and found for Acton, the median owner-occupied home value, so that includes homes that are not single-family, is 700,000. So it's a larger number, and we could leave it as it's, increased since 2018, but I think we could put a more accurate number in there, and it doesn't make sense to me to have single-family home value when we're actually incentivizing multifamily housing with the MBTA zoning.
So I think we were just referring to what was reported in the housing reduction plan. There's certainly newer information, but that's kind of what we have produced as a definitive source on our housing data. But if I don't really have a strong feeling about it either way, to be honest with you. We're just trying to put something that we think the state would like.
I guess I thought if we could put a higher number it makes the case more strongly. And my general opinion is to support all 5 of these letters.
David?
Thank you. So if, for the inclusionary zoning, if we got this grant and the studies turned out to be, to allow us to either change the AMI or the percentage, that would require a change to zoning law, I presume, right?
Yes.
And will there be, this purely be the economic study as required by the MBTA communities law, or will this have some kind of public input process and that kind of thing?
That's a really good question, because I think knowing whether it's feasible is different than proposing at town meeting, which, as we just saw, was a 2-year effort. So that would be an area that we'd want direction, I guess, from the board on. If we don't want to take this on, then, because we should do that. We should get the data and then roll it out in the way that we just did if we wanted to bring it forward. And just getting it to know, I guess we could just get it to know, and then we can decide how to proceed.
Oh, sure.
So
And then
the reason why I mention this is, I think that we as a town need to be, I obviously I have supported low-income housing projects that we've built in the past, or have been built in town in the past. But I think we need to be a little careful about having the people who need subsidized housing go here, right? And, in other words, this is the place for the people who cannot afford a $750,000 house. We put them in this project and that project. And even the state is headed more towards the voucher model. The state is discussing more and more the voucher model. So people just have a regular market rate apartment, and they get helped, sometimes 70% by the state to afford that market rate apartment. And then, people are well integrated, mixed. It's not obvious who the richer or poorer people are. And so anyway, I think that has to be considered as part of this process, and I just wanted to make sure that there was a public input process.
Jim, and then Alyssa.
I'm very much in favor of this. The 2 parts to me are the specific part that's mentioned here is about the MBTA zoning, but the planning department has also talked about having an inclusionary zoning requirement, more townwide for all multifamily housing and I think this is the kind of analysis that would help drive that. Now, I think that after the analysis is done, there's still a public input process that's needed before something goes to town meeting. But I think gathering the data and doing the analysis would be great. And it's complex in my mind when I think about it, because we have those 2 levers. We have the AMI level and the percentage, and what's the magic combination that both helps create a variety of housing without creating a situation in which developers go, I'm not going to build anything in Acton. I'm not going to make enough money. I could make more money over in Boxborough. But I think it's really important to understand what's possible, and so I support this.
Alyssa?
So it's my understanding from what I've heard from planning staff at the planning board hearings is that this is an economic feasibility analysis that's done by a firm that is approved by the state to see if we can increase from 10% for MBTA overlay districts to a higher number, 15, no more than 20%. So this would, I'm assuming, would not include a public engagement process. However, the townwide inclusionary zoning that they are beginning to explore would be a different process. And I think it's very clear from comments that were made on special town meeting floor, on town meeting floor, in the planning board hearings, in email correspondence, that the community is in favor of having as high of a requirement as possible, regardless of whether a project developer says, I'm going to go to this other town instead because they're only requiring 10% instead of 15%. I think that we owe it to the residents of Acton to honor their wishes for the highest possible affordability. And also, it doesn't seem like it's incredibly likely that that will happen because it didn't happen in Lexington, and their market is hotter than ours.
David?
So I completely agree that for the MBTA community zoning, as Alyssa says, the process, the criteria, and the firm are prescribed by the state. But my concern was kind of after that, which is why I asked my question first. So let's suppose that the state's firm allowed us, just for the sake of argument, allowed us to require 15% at 60% AMI. Then there's the process of changing our zoning law to do that.
Just the MBTA.
I know, but we would have to modify our zoning law to do that. So once the firm says that it's economically feasible, we will have to prepare and propose to town meeting a change to zoning. That's what has the input process. Right, if we're allowed, if it's economically feasible, then we could change the zoning law, but we don't have to. And then after that, we would propose a change to town. If everybody, we would have to, the planning board would have to, everybody would have to agree that we want to make this change. And then for that, we need a public input process.
Alyssa?
But only for the MBTA overlay districts. Yes, okay.
It is true that, Dean should go.
Jim?
I do still have the hope that the analysis will help us understand whether it makes sense to consider inclusionary zoning for other multifamily houses outside of the MBTA district. But I understand that's not what this study is about. But it might be useful information to understand how how a feasibility study is done and what the results are, and that might help us in thinking about other multifamily housing.
Are we all set to approve these letters? Did we approve them already? Sorry. Yep.
Sorry,
Sorry.
there was some typos and some very clear changes that we've made to the sewer one. I think I just need a little more direction on the housing one. If you wanted us to dig up the latest info, if you're comfortable with the 2018 housing production plan. We're happy to do either, but just wanted to make sure I had clarity on that.
I mean, what do you think? Personally, I think using the latest data from the housing production plan makes sense because it's a document, but what do you think? I don't.
I think it's 6 years old.
One option would be to keep the paragraph as it is with the numbers from 2018, but then at the end the last sentence is, this gap has only increased since 2018, and this issue has been further elevated through public feedback. That would be a point to introduce, some of the more updated data, not as definitive, but as an indication of how much worse it's gotten. So, for example, the census data now indicates, this or that. It might just, that might be a way of still having the definitive reviewed numbers from 2018, but indicate that, some of the specifics about how it's gotten higher.
Does David?
I was just going to say that I move to allow the chair to sign all these 5 letters with appropriate edits.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to number 8, approve the transfer of management of the conservation land located at 13 Arlington Street, formerly known as 183 Newtown Road and 180 Newtown Road, to the Conservation Commission, subject to the perpetual conservation restriction. David?
Was there detail in the packet that I missed? Because I could not find it. I mean, I looked these up. I looked them up at home and I looked them up again here. And did I miss this?
So we're happy, this is something that I don't believe is urgent, but Tom is prepared tonight to talk through what we're asking here tonight, and if we're not comfortable, we can come back and make sure we provide better upfront info.
Did you see the memo?
Maybe I missed that when I was going through the packet, but I was also looking for the exact bounds of this land and other things, and I couldn't find those. And so, I mean, I'm happy to get the presentation from Tom, and maybe it gets answered, but if we don't, I was wondering if we might delay it into a future meeting. But anyway, I'm happy to go through with the presentation.
Madam Chair, if you're happy, or if you're okay with it, I'm happy to put up the map that's on page 2 of the packet.
Sounds good.
And that shows some lines of the property. So this is the Anderson property. Oh. All right, so in the faint yellow that we can't see too well on the screen here, this is the outline of the Anderson property. If you can remember back to 2013, which I'm sure there's been a lot that's happened there, so forgive you if you can't. This was in front of town meeting to accept and authorize the select board to place a conservation restriction on this property. And Bergman, the land steward, is working actively towards finalizing the language of that conservation restriction. And through his investigation, along with the town council's office, they were not able to find a vote that was taken formally by the select board to accept this and place a conservation restriction on that property. So what we're asking for tonight is for the board to do that, a little delayed, but to complete that portion of the conservation restriction requirement.
Jim?
I was involved in the Land Stewardship Committee when this was happening, very familiar with that land and the trails that have begun to happen on it, and I'm very much in favor of, completing this little T crossing and I dotting to make it official.
Dean?
Yeah, just to further what Jim said, was the clear intent of town meeting and all the discussions that I had with staff at that time, that, this is going to be conservation land. In point of fact, the Land Stewardship Committee and a private developer have already put in some trails, parking lot. I believe there's a boardwalk that's been installed. So it's clearly acting like conservation land under the control of the Conservation Commission. It just needs to have this final vote.
Any more questions? Alyssa and then David.
I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe that this parcel connects another couple of parcels, and it was used as justification for the PCRC at 180 Newtown in a letter from Tom Tidman to the planning board. So the intent is most certainly, regardless of what's happening, it was used as this other conservation land that we're going to acquire from the development at 180 Newtown will connect directly to the Anderson land.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry for not scrolling down enough in the packet memo. I'm okay with this. I don't need to delay. One of the things I was trying to figure out is whether this was the PCRC land, and it's not that. So I withdraw any reason to delay if the board wants to go forward.
Does anyone want to move a motion?
I move the select board delegate the management of the conservation land, 13 Arlington Street, formerly 183 Newtown Road, to the Acton Conservation Commission, subject to the perpetual conservation restriction.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Tom.
Was there any opposed? You might want to ask, in case you were, unless you were clear
I
that you
think
heard
we
yeses
were
from
all
everybody.
unanimous, weren't we? Yeah, but I have it. Thank you.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Madam Chair, not
Sorry.
that I want to further complicate this, but
Yep.
did the motion include also 180 Newtown Road?
It was formerly known as
Formerly known as 183, and also
180
180,
Newtown.
so, which is across the street.
It's all inclusive,
Okay?
is my understanding.
So long as
Anderson
it's-
Yeah,
As long as it's clear that everything's included. That's
Yep.
great. Yep.
do we need to do that again? Or-
I think we've been doing our best to make the agenda listing match the motion, and I think if the motion was what's listed on the agenda, I think we're covered.
I don't know exactly, Alyssa, what you said, but did the
I read the motion in the packet.
Formally has a different connotation than formerly, right? Yeah.
What's in there, not what's on here? Okay.
Are we
I
good?
think we're good.
Yeah, we're good. Moving on to number 9, approve withdrawal from the Acton Health Insurance Trust effective December 31st, 2024.
Thank you, and now I'll defer to our health insurance trustee on the board here, but this is just part of the work that we've been doing to transition to our new health plan. And because the retirees are still in our current health plan, we needed to stagger when we actually withdraw from the trust. But I don't know if you have anything to add, but that's my report.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds exactly right, actually.
Jim?
Well, I would be happy to move that the board hereby clarify its prior vote on March 18, 2024, to withdraw from the Acton Health Insurance Trust effective December 31st, 2024, so that, one, the committee's active participation in the trust for purposes of providing health insurance to subscribers shall cease on June 30th, 2024. 2, the committee will remain a participating member of the trust through June 30th, 2026 for the sole purpose of administering and paying runout claims and other costs of the trust. And 3, the Acton Health Insurance Trust shall be completely dissolved as of June 30th, 2026.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. So are we moving on to number 10? Assign a board member to Eagle Scout Court of Honor, May 31st, 2024, Concord Scout House, acknowledging Kate deBlonk. Any volunteers? Dean? I love home, and I love the Concord Scout House. So I will do number 10. And then number 11, assign select board member to Eagle Scout Court of Honor, June 5th, 2024, NARA Park, acknowledging Trinity Gabrielle Cameron, Madhav Kulkarni, Saket Suresh, Prakul Saxeena, Lina, Lawande, and Ari Shukla. Any volunteers?
I am available on that date.
You're available?
Yes.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
In addition to presenting certificates, are there remarks?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
make a little remark. In the past, what I've done is connected with the family beforehand and maybe learned about the project that the Eagle Scout has done. And yeah, it's kind of cool. Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, those of us that have done this before might be happy to send you our
Definitely.
remarks so you have something to work with.
Would any of you like to come with me, since there are 6 of them?
That's Wednesday, it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
I can come with.
Okay. That'll be awesome.
On to consent items. So if anyone has anything to hold, please hold at the time of reading. So number 12, appoint Joseph Topol as constable to service the town of Acton with a term to end on May 20th, 2027. Approve citations for Eagle Scout Court of Honor recipients Will Atherton, Thomas Crowley, and Owen Pierce. Number 14, accept donations to support the 2024 Summer Concert Series and special events. Should I read them all? Yes, read them all. Yeah. Acton Ford, $3,000. Acton Pharmacy for $500. AMB Countertop Incorporated for $500. Bursau Gas and Oil, $250. Forever Tile for $250. Generations Law Group for $250. Great Spaces Incorporated for $250. Huntington Learning Center for $1,000. Kitchen Outfitters for $500. KJ's Cafe for $250. McGovern Auto Group for $3,000. Open Door Education for $500, Pedal Power Bike and Ski for $250, Revolution Community Yoga and Fitness for $500, Romano's Pizza and Pasta for $170, Squash West for $250, The Bee's Knees for $1,000, Workers Credit Union for $1,000. Approve one-day alcoholic beverage license applications. House Rabbit Network, NARA Park, August 11th, 2024. Jacqueline Scanlon, NARA Park, June 8th, 2024. Carnegie Mellon University, NARA Park, July 21st, 2024. And Carol Barron, NARA Pavilion, July 18th, 2024. 16, approve meeting minutes, April 12th, 29, May 6, and 7, 2024.
Hold.
17, appoint Linda Vieira as a full member of the Citizens Library Governance Advisory with a term to end upon completion of task. So move and approve items 12 through 15, and then 17.
Second. Did you move?
Oh, I did move, I'm sorry.
Second.
Yeah, sorry. David?
I just wanted to say with gratitude to all the companies making donations
You
in
know,
item 14.
I was thinking that, and I was wondering if there was some sort of drive going on that we don't know about.
So thank you for the question. We get generous support from local businesses and organizations in town, and that's part of the efforts of our event coordinator, Maura Haberman, who works in rec department, and she puts out a lot of information for local businesses that want to participate in our summer concert series and other events. And as you can see, the businesses really want to help out, so it's exciting to see that support.
Thank you. Dean, you held 16?
We need to vote on the motion first.
Oh, sorry.
Vote the main.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? And Dean?
I'd like to bring these minutes back at our next meeting. I didn't have a sufficient time to get through them until very late into the weekend, and then there's been a couple of other edits suggested, so we just didn't have enough time to turn it around. And at least Tom is not available to help facilitate that work, so the new clerk will bring them back.
David?
Is there a timing problem with April 12th? And I was wondering if any of your edits were to April 12th. And if not, maybe we could pass just that one, because usually we try to do them within 30 days. So anyway,
Yes.
if there's no edits to April 12th, then we could move just that one.
Yes, we do, and my recollection for the April 12th, I'll defer to the new clerk. Are any of the edits that you had suggested?
There were 3 to the April 12th minutes. Is that what you asked me?
Pardon me?
Is that the question you asked me?
Yes, that
Okay,
is.
thanks.
Jim?
A possible way to avoid the potential open meeting law issues would be to approve these minutes and then approve amended minutes at a future meeting. Since at least the current minutes
We can,
provide some information.
we can also point to the fact that Lisa is out of the office until May 29th, so it's an exceptional circumstance. Unless you have.
Does the OML allow that?
Sir, is anybody asking me? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that we should approve them and plan to change them if we're not happy with them. Well, particularly the 12th and the 29th.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to touch the 6th and 7th. You could say approve subject to further review, if that makes you feel better. We could also just post the draft minutes, and maybe that covers us.
David?
I think we should personally go with the amended minutes. So I move to approve meeting minutes from April 12th and 29th, and noting that we will review them for further edits.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Any opposed? And I was going to keep the meeting evaluation. Yes. It's a little rocky.
No, not Rocky, very good. I'm forgetting, when do we do, I know there's no new members of the board, but when do we do committee assignments? Are we just leaving things the way they are? Do you intend to do that at our next meeting?
So, yes, we will do that at our next meeting. Well, I should have met with you before. Yes, I'll debrief and it'll be on an agenda. So, yes, we'll have our list of our liaison. Alyssa, sorry.
I thought the meeting went very smoothly. It was a very enjoyable meeting.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Good job, Fran.
Dean, are you? Thank you.
I also want to second the amazing contributions of businesses.
Yeah.
I noticed that some of them are out of Acton, so I commend NARA, I guess, for reaching out beyond Acton's borders, because I know for a fact that there are residents who do not live in Acton, people who do not live in Acton who are attending our concerts and our events. And maybe we can reach out to Concord as well as Westford, and I think there was one from Maynard, because I've seen some Concordians at NARA.
Thank you. Jim?
I thought that was that was a smooth transition, and, you'll get used to it. I hardly ever managed to have a meeting end by 9:15, so, you clearly did something right. Yeah, maybe.
No, you're much more efficient than Jim was.
We didn't have overrides to talk about.
Yeah. Let's see, anything else about follow-up items? No, just to say them out loud again, we will talk at a future agenda, I hope, about the gas leak blower bylaw, and we'll talk again at a future meeting about how and whether we want to construct some kind of group that looks at, efficiencies in the town spending.
David?
So as far as the task force goes, since that was a FinCom suggestion, I had approached Jim about that and asked him if I should circle back with the Finance Committee Chair and Vice Chair as to where to proceed. I'm in the process of doing that. I'll now coordinate with you on that and pass along whatever their suggestions are for structure and
That sounds
kind of
good.
thing.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed on that one?